everybody. My name's Taylor, and I'm going to be talking to you today about what I took away from the class Interpersonal Communications. This course covers interpersonal communication and what that could mean in regards to our lives and the relationships we have along the way. Julia T. Wood's text Interpersonal Communications Everyday Encounters. Talks about how communication is more than talking. It's about connection, empathy, understanding, listening, and relating. And I feel like I took a great deal from it. The first thing that I want to touch on is the concept of self and how communication really does play into, how we see ourselves and how we communicate with the rest of the world. I felt like this section was very, very valuable because it had me kind of go back to a place of my childhood and really understand that how I was communicated to as a child has essentially come out as an adult in how I communicate. I say that parts of my childhood, and when I think about the communication aspect of it, still kind of haunts me to this day. My mom was not a great communicator. We had a lot of yelling around the house, and so even today when someone maybe has a conversation with me that I'm not in favor of, I will kind of burrow away and kind of sink within myself. And reading this section made me realize that about myself, and so it makes me evaluate how I can be a more effective communicator. Julia T. Woods also touched on culture, and I think that's very important when we think about communicating and how to do it more effectively coming from the West. The West has a very idealistic or individualistic culture around us, and other cultures are more family oriented. They treat the family as a unit, and therefore they have a huge support system. The West, if you're lucky, maybe you have that. Not everybody does. And so I think learning about different cultures is very, very valuable to us. I'm in Alaska currently, and I'm reading a book that says Hunt, Gather, Raise, and it's about how natives raise their kids and how they do it differently than the West. And I find it very valuable. Also, the Universal Class acknowledges and states this in an article. It says, if we are always right, then by definition, when someone disagrees with us, we believe that they're wrong. That kind of ties back to family and how communication starts there, right? I would never have made the connection between upbringing and communication without reading that section of the book. So I was happy to do it. I also really enjoyed the section where Julia T. Woods says, who's entitled to anger? I never thought about it like this, but there is there is a category of people who are entitled to anger, and then there's a huge category of people who are not entitled to anger, and that's usually the minorities. And in a world full of racism and immigration and systemic inequality, I think it's really important for us to think of anger differently and come to a place where everybody is allotted to feel anger, not just one small section of the world. Anger, when rooted in truth, can be very, very powerful and can make huge change. It shouldn't just be reserved for white men. As Elizabeth Spellman states in the article Anger's Privilege, she says, the systemic denial of anger, when it is expressed by marginalized, minoritized, or unprivileged, it itself is a critical mechanism of subordination. Powerful, right? I really enjoyed that. So, my overall takeaway is that I have so much room to learn how to communicate more effectively. And when doing so, and when I get there, I feel like my relationships and how I put value into those relationships will only become deeper, and I'll make deeper connections, and I'll be able to explain myself and how I view the world to others in a easier way. So thank you for hanging around. I hope you guys have a wonderful summer. Thanks.